This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
My guest today is Blair DeMarco Wettlaufer. According to my cue cards, Blair, it says you are the Chief Operations Officer for Kingston Data and Credit. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
Fantastic.
The way that collection agencies get paid is a contingency or a commission. So when a collection agency collects money, they get to bill or keep a percentage of what is collected. And that could be as low as 5%. It could be as high as 55%, depending on the age and the nature of the debt. There are clients that will pay people for just warm bodies or number of calls or, for portfolio management, time on phone. But the bulk of how agencies are paid are on a commission basis.
Now, what is the difference between first party and third party? What does that mean?
Okay, so third party, I call you from Kingston Data and Credit and say, Mr. Jones, this is Blair DeMarco Wettlaufer calling from Kingston Data and Credit. You owe XYZ Hydro $100. That's third-party collections. We're acting as a collection agency on behalf of another party.
A third party, gotcha.
Right. First-party collections, what that is in our business, sometimes large companies like Shaw or provincial hydro companies don't have the staff or the wherewithal or the technology to make their own accounts receivable calls. So they hire a collection agency, not to call as a collection agency, but to call as XYZ Hydro. So I would call and say, hi, it's Blair calling from XYZ Hydro, even though I'm sitting in Kingston Data and Credit. Now, I'm not affecting their credit rating. I'm not, it's literally the account's not delinquent. It's just keeping up on the accounts receivable that might be 30 days past due.
Gotcha. And most of what you would do and most of what we think of as collection agents is the third party stuff.
Right.
I got two basic questions for you today. My first question is, I want to walk through a scenario of how you get involved.
Sure.
Okay. So let's do the most simple scenario I can think of. The person, the debtor, let's call it me. I've got a credit card with, I don't know, a bank or whomever, and I have not been able to pay it.
Right.
I'm now behind. So I assume the first time I miss a payment, the credit card company is going to, send me, put a little note on the bottom of my statement. Hey, you didn't pay. And maybe after a month I get a phone call. At some point though, I'm just not paying.
Right.
How long would it take for the credit card company to say, you know what, we've tried, we're going to send it to a third-party collection agency?
Depends on the bank and whatnot, but you're probably looking at about the 90-day mark. If you miss one payment, you're right. You get a little note at the bottom, past due. If you miss two, hey, what's going on? You missed three. Suddenly your credit card is shut off. You can't go buy anything anymore, even if you had room on the credit card. And somewhere between day 90 and 120, they're probably shipping it off to a collection agency.
And why would the bank, who has all these employees who can make phone calls, why are they sending it to you? Why don't they just collect it themselves?
It's economy of scale. Banks have all these employees, but they're not set up like a collection agency. They're set up like a bank. Their people are busy bringing on new credit card customers or dealing with the customers that are 30, 60, 90 days behind or working out, pay the interest and we'll pay, the minimum is $200, but the interest is 40, pay the 40 and we'll just keep your credit card on freeze till you get caught up. There is a huge amount of manpower involved in collections and banks are doing collections plus credit reporting, plus mortgage adjudication, plus. They don't have the dedicated manpower to do this, and their people aren't trained to deal with all these horrible situations. People don't want to be in debt, and their people are wearing 5 different hats. Okay, these people call these files in the morning, and then they're going to go do something else in the afternoon.
If I'm a bank, making a collection call is not a happy thing.
It doesn't have to be a horrible thing. But the thing is, if you borrow money from your friend Ted, and Ted says, hey, about that $50 I loaned you. Well, Ted's your friend. There isn't this sense of authority over you. But if Ted sends you to the collection agency, Ted sent you to the collection agency, this collection agency is calling, suddenly there's a sense of urgency just because it's a third party getting involved. So often that happens with the bank too. The bank has my mortgage. The bank, oh, I'm in collections. Okay, now I got to take care of it.
Question number 4, should I even bother with collections agency if the debt is not listed on my credit report?
Well, so when a collection agency gets the debt, they haven't listed it on the bureau yet.
Because you just got it.
Right. Now, different collection agencies have different policies. Our agency's policy is try to reach the consumer before wrecking their credit rating for 6 years. So would we want them to talk to us before we affect their credit rating? Yes, because if they avoid us, we have no choice. We'll press the big angry red button and upload their file to the credit bureaus. But again, if it's a 20-year-old debt, no, don't talk to, you don't need to talk to the agency because they can't affect your credit rating. It's 6 years from the date of first delinquency for an agency. So they can't report a debt that's 10 years old, even if you make a payment.
Gotcha, because the time is already up.
Right.
So the answer again is kind of the same as the first question. Well, yes, you should talk to people, but find out what's going on.
Find out your rights, find out your options. Some creditors don't allow agencies to list to the bureau. Some agencies are small and don't have the technology or the membership with the credit bureaus to list. Some list, like we list twice a month. So if you tell us, not paying you, go to heck. Within 15 days, we'll put it on the bureau.
And the reverse is true. If I pay, then
I'll never affect or you make arrangements. Why would I affect your bureau? That's our 99 times out of 100. That's our leverage.
Yep. It's physically impossible for you to make 12,000 calls today.
Right.
So what do you do with that spreadsheet? Do you sort it by most likely to collect? Do you run it through some fancy algorithm to see if the guy's already bankrupt? Like, what do you do with it?
Yeah, exactly. So we'll take the 12,000 file, we'll bring it into our database because we have all the fancy tools to be able to sift through all this. And we'll match up the right fields to the right columns in the spreadsheet. And then we have a number of automated processes that kick in. The first thing we have to do is we have to send a letter. And in Ontario, you have to send a letter by mail or by email if you have an email address or a mailing address. And then you have to wait 6 days before you call the person.
So let's just stop there. Sure. You have to send either a letter or email before you can make a phone call.
If you've got the data. Now, Ontario changed it because often we'll get a spreadsheet, mail returned. Well, there's no point in sending a letter to a mail returned address. We can call, but we need to offer a letter in that initial call going, hey, you're in collections, but you deserve a letter. What's your email address? I'll send it off to you.
So if I get a call from a collection person, I can say, look, I don't know if I owe this debt. I don't know who you are. Send me a letter.
100%. Okay. And often we'll get bad data because the customer could have moved. And that could be why they're in collections. They didn't know they owed the debt. And the bank or the fitness club or the phone company has been sending letters to the previous address. So the person can say, well, I didn't get a letter. You deserve a letter. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Okay. So you run your fancy algorithms and you say, okay, this person is dead. This person is...
Right. So we send the letter because we might as well send the letter right away and get that 6-day clock ticking. In the meantime, we take all the data and we upload it once a week to the credit bureaus, well, to one credit bureau. And they have what's called a monitor program. So what happens is we send them all our data on all our live files, and every day they send us, well, Bob just moved yesterday. Here's his new address. Hey, Bob just went bankrupt. Here's his trustee. And we get that data on a daily basis and bring it into our system. And when we get a new batch of files, we just add that into the rotation. And it will tell us a number of things. Does Bob have a mortgage? Does Bob have a different phone number? Is Bob deceased? And obviously, if Bob is bankrupt or deceased and the debt was incurred before the bankruptcy, obviously we don't want to call that. If Bob is deceased, we want to send a gentle letter to the estate. We don't want to call. If Bob's moved, we'll send a letter to the new address. And we have that monitoring program going constantly. We also do a scrub, I'd say about twice a month, with the other bureau, because there's two bureaus in competition, and say, hey, do you have any information the other bureau doesn't have? And we do sort our files. We do have a scoring mechanism because obviously somebody who has a debt that's 2 months old and has a mortgage and has a phone number, they're more likely to pay because it would affect them if we affected their credit. If the debt's 15 years old, we can't affect their credit. If they're 90, they're probably not going and applying for a new bank account or a credit card or what have you. So we do have a scoring system of, if we have to call 12,000 files, which one should we call first? And in reality, of the 12,000 files, 6,000 files are trace files. We don't have a phone number. We don't have an email address. We might have a physical address and we mail a letter and we don't hear back. We're not going to spend time, going through the white pages like we used to in the 90s here with the phone books on the back shelf. We'll end up putting it on that person's credit bureau. And often we get calls every day. I can't get a car. This is on my credit ring. Oh, well, I'm happy to help you. How can we get this cleared up?
I think we kind of already answered this question, but should I accept a settlement offer and pay it or don't pay it? Will that start my statute of limitations all over again? Well, we already said that as soon as you make a payment, that starts the clock again.
Now, that last episode we did here in the studio, there were a lot of questions about that. You can make a settlement, but before you make a so if you owe $4,000 and you agree to pay $2,000, before you pay anything, get it in writing on condition of me paying $2,000 by October 30th. This debt is waived and I owe nothing further. Without that letter, that $2,000 is just a partial payment. And yes, you've reset the statute.
Gotcha.
But if you've made a settlement and you have an agreement in writing that the debt is waived, the remaining balance, then no, you're not resetting the statute because the debt is gone.
Yeah, and if I owed money and you called me up and you said, "Hey, you got to pay $2,000," I'd say, "Well, look, I don't have $2,000, but my mother's willing to lend me $1,000. Would you be willing to accept that?" You'd either say yes or no.
Yeah.
But if you said yes, I'd say, "Okay, great. Send me something in writing that says the $1,000 will be full and final settlement, and then we're done. Great. Once I've got that, I transfer you the money and we're good."
Right.
So get it in writing. Again,
Get it in writing.
Get it in writing.
You mentioned, can I arrange to get this off my bureau? No. So there are some agencies that offer in the States called pay for delete. You pay me, I'll take it off your credit rating. The bureaus really, really hate that because the credit bureau is supposed to be a historical record. Doug, you made your payment on time. You made your payment on time. You were 30 days behind. You made your payment on time. Okay, you have an R1 rating. Or a collection agency listed your debt in 2008 on your bureau for $4,000. They don't want that historical record being monkeyed with, and somebody going back and taking it. Now, obviously, say I affect your bureau. You say, "What's this all about?" I show you proof, and you go, "This isn't valid. I have this letter here saying I was forgiven this debt." I am required to go delete it because it shouldn't be there.
To start, is being sued by a collection agency something to worry about?
Right. So I'm going to describe it as they have the legal right to do it, but it's not something they do very often. So it's a question of perception versus reality. What do they do in practice versus what are they going to threaten you with in their cover letters, their emails?
So you talk about threatening. How often have you had a client sitting in front of you who said, "I'm getting these calls from a collection agency and they're going to take me to court"?
What time is it?
Yeah, exactly right. All the time.
Right.
It's a very common thing.
Anyone who's dealing anyway with collection agencies, it's the most common thing they do. You've got to pay me by Friday or I'm taking you to court.
Now, a lot of collection agencies, the collectors aren't well trained and they call and, you owe $200. I'm going to sue you if you don't pay. No, they're not. They're lying. Mm-hmm. Now, that being said, our guideline's $3,000. But we represent Dr. Bob, the dentist. "Oh, he bounced 5 checks on me. It's the principle of the thing." We could be forced to sue a file that's lower. Or we have multiple accounts and, we'll sue one and call Bob Smith and go, "Okay, Bob, we sued on the one file. We don't want to sue on the others. Do you want to take care of this?" Because a lot of people don't believe that legal action will happen, or they don't understand. They think, they watched, Perry Mason on TV and, I just showed my age. But, what happens is if we sue a file, and in Ontario, it's up to $25,000 in small claims court, we send out a statement of claim, which is a court form with the attached documentation and why we think they owe what they owe. And we attach a copy of their signed contract or their statement of account or whatever to prove the debt, for every penny, and we sue it. And 9 out of 10 people don't file a defense. They get this in the mail. It's scary. It's unknown. They just put it down. 20 days later, we can go for default judgment and then take 20% of their pay. And the people call, "Oh my God, what can I do?" "I'm sorry, it's too late. When we called you, you should have called us." Now, that being said, we don't want to sue files, even more than we don't want to affect someone's credit rating, because it's expensive, it's lengthy, and nobody wins. People get confused. They say, "You can't affect my credit rating. It's over 2 years old." No, legal action can't happen for 2 years. Credit bureau reporting is 6 years from the date of delinquency or acknowledgement of the debt.
Yeah, and so to be very specific on that 2-year rule, You could sue anybody for anything anytime you want, but if you were to sue me for a debt that's 3 years old, I could go to court and say, hey, judge, it's been more than 2 years, Limitations Act of Ontario.
It is statute barred.
Statute barred.
And thrown out.
And of course, you already know what the rule is, so you're not suing me for something for 3 years
No,
old anyways, because
no.
you know you're going to get kicked out of court and that wouldn't look good. So
Now, it's very common in my world here where someone had a cell phone 10 years ago and stopped paying. They end up filing a proposal, and we get a proof of claim from the collection agency on behalf of the cell phone company because they've bought the debt from 10 years ago or whatever.
Sure.
And what we are supposed to be now doing is saying, no, sorry, it's an old debt, it's statute barred, therefore I am not accepting that claim in the proposal.
Right.
And in this particular case, in my example, the debt's 10 years old. It's not showing up on your credit bureau anyways.
Right.
And I believe that if you get a debt that is 10 years old, you're not allowed to put it on the credit bureau either?
100% cannot.
Cannot. Okay. So it's a debt that's so old, you still owe the money.
But it's toothless.
It's toothless.
We can call people saying, you owe this money. Do you want to pay it? There are no consequences.
Right. And so that's what you would do. You'd phone them up and say, hey, you owe the money. And if they pay, great. But
Now, some agencies won't be as transparent.
Right.
You owe money. You're in collections. You know that could affect your credit rating. People should know their rights.
and that's exactly why we do this show.
Right.
So if the debt is statute barred, if it's more than 2 years since the last activity date, since the date of default, then they can't sue you for it. Now,
Right.
I guess they could sue you for it, but if they did, you'd show up in court and you'd say, hey, judge, look, it's more than 2 years old. Here's my proof. It gets
Absolutely.
thrown out, and
Done.
that's it. And as a general rule, the legit creditors like the big banks aren't suing people for old debts.
No,
I
God.
don't see it.
Well, suing people is expensive and time consuming and takes a lot of manpower. Nobody wants to sue anybody. But obviously, if you have a successful podcast and insolvency company and you're not paying your debts, well, you have money. And if you owe $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, okay, now it's worth it. If you owe $50 for a cell phone, no one is ever going to
not
sue you.
worth it.
No, because it's
But-
going to cost $400, $500, $600 to sue you.
But it's easy to threaten it. But that's
Well,
why
you shouldn't.
And so the legit collection agents aren't threatening that.
No, now they are saying, okay, Doug, you owe $50 to a cell phone company. We're going to affect your credit rating, and that's going to impact you for 6 years.
Right.
And that could impact your mortgage, and it could cost you a lot more than $50. Absolutely.
And those are the two dates to remember. 2 years, okay, we can't sue you, but things don't get purged from your credit report for 6 years.
Right.
So if you've got a debt that's 2 years old, it's still going to be on your credit report for 4 years.
Right.
Under that scenario, we can't sue you for it, but it's whacking your credit, so maybe you should just make an arrangement and pay it. We want to address this question, what to do when debt collectors get aggressive. And so, Scott, you've spent the last couple of weeks thinking about this and jotting down a whole bunch of notes from real life cases that we've seen, what really happens. So we got papers spread out everywhere, but let's see if we can give some insight into this. What can you do? What are your options? So we're going to make this as practical as we can.
Yeah. So if you only have the one debt that you're in trouble with, and most of the people we talk to, it's multiple debts. So we're going to give you a different answer in a second. If you've only got one debt, you're dealing with a collection agency, maybe you take the time to talk to them. Maybe because it's one thing, it's a one-off, you can deal with it, and probably they'll settle. Most of the folks we talk to, it's not one, it's two, it's three, it's four. It's because there's been a ripple effect. It's one of those unattended consequences that I haven't been able to pay this bill, I borrowed from that one, and so now you've got a number of different items in collections. Well, so the correct answer here is not to deal with the collection agency. The correct answer here is to deal with your debt problem, which means, contacting somebody like us. Are you going to file a consumer proposal? Maybe you need to look at bankruptcy. Maybe you just need somebody to help you sort this stuff out.
And is your answer different if I've already been sued?
No. I mean, if you've already been sued, again, if only one person has sued you, the risk you run now is you're going to have your wages garnished or your bank account frozen. But if one person has sued you, probably somebody else is going to make that same decision as well. And so you're already at the point where you should be seeking professional help. And that's not just me trying to sell my services.
It's actually the truth.
You got a toothache, you go see the dentist. You got a debt problem, you go see somebody to help you with your debt.
So it's fairly simple then. If you've got one collection agency after you, and let's say it's an old cell phone bill, we see that all the time. So,
Yeah.
okay, it was originally $500. Now they say it's $1,000. they're probably not going to take you to court for that, but it's also probably something you can deal with on your own. You talk to them and say, look, guys, how about I give you, $300, let's make a deal, whatever. And you want to make sure you do it in the right way, get them to send you a letter saying $300 is full and final settlement, all the rest of it.
Yep.
If you have 3 or 4 of them, though,
Right.
And in most cases, what they want is a lump sum. They don't want $50 for the next 2 years. They want $300 right now. So if you can't settle with all of them, then
what's the point in settling with any of them if you can't settle with all of them?
And in fact, you probably make it worse. You now settle with one of them, and that reflects on your credit report that you paid it, and all the rest of them know, oh, he's got money, and boom, you're getting calls from everyone. So if you have multiple debts, and they're now at the collection agency stage, then yes, it's probably better to look for a bigger picture solution, deal with all of them.
That's right. Just makes more sense.
And a consumer proposal or a bankruptcy will stop a lawsuit.
Correct.
It'll stop even if you've already got a judgment against you.
Yeah, there's something called a stay of proceedings. It's an automatic provision in the law, so it means that a creditor cannot advance any sort of legal situation further. So if they haven't started, it stops them from actually commencing. If they've already started, it stops them dead in the tracks. If they already have a judgment against you, it stops it from being enforceable. If they're already garnishing your wages, it stops them from garnishing your wages.
And that's a key point, because a lot of people think, well, they're already garnishing my wages. Nothing I can do now. I wish I dealt with it before it went to court. Well, no, it doesn't matter what stage it is. Obviously, the sooner you deal with it, the better, but it can be stopped.
And the reasoning is this, they're stopping that one particular creditor because the assumption is you've got multiple creditors. And there's no reason why that one creditor should be treated better than everybody else.
Everyone gets treated the same.
That's right.
If you say, look, I'm currently being garnished, or I'm currently, my hours have been reduced at work, but one of the things you can do, obviously there are people that contact us and say, I can't do anything. Well, we have to follow through with the consequences now. We have to affect your credit rating. One of the options you have is, look, I can't. There's nothing I can do right now. I just lost my job. I'm going to make a good faith payment of $20. To show you I actually want to take care of this. And that'll, if you propose that to an agency, it will often get them to back off for 30 days, where they don't call you, they don't send letters, and it gives you a chance to get your feet in under you and get your life back on track.
Yeah, and I would counter that by saying, if this is a debt that's a year and a half old.
Right. No, you're right. It will reset the clock. So don't make a payment unless you're committed to paying.
I know that I'm
balance.
back to work in a month, so give you $20 now. I can continue on with payments. Yeah. Right. You got to be careful, and so
absolutely.
And I like the plug you put in there. For go talk to a licensed insolvency trustee, because if you've got debt that you can pay back, then you should pay it back.
Right. Now, here's the thing that we see. We see people who owe a ton of money. They owe 5 payday loan companies that are charging them 59.9% interest. And they are treading water. They're paying $400 to $500 a month in interest, and they're not improving their situation. And in a lot of cases, when they explain that to us, I'm like, oh my God, go to a nonprofit credit counseling company that'll get you an unorderly payment of debt program. Go to a trustee, who can do a consumer proposal. We'll start with credit counseling because it's free. But we say trustee after that.
Not really free, because they charge a fee, and
they charge the creditor a fee.
They charge
the nonprofits.
No, they charge a fee too. Yep, the standard. This is good that you're on the show.
No,
hey. The standard now, and I can show you documents because my clients bring them all the time, is they typically will charge a 10% fee. So if you've got $50,000 worth of debts, they'll set you up on a debt management plan where you pay $50,000 back plus $5,000.
Well, I understand that from the debt settlement companies, but I'm talking like Catholic Family Services and those nonprofit ones.
Yeah, they don't exist anymore. But yes, I can show you the documents.
No, I know the debt settlements.
Yeah.
Actually,
no, these are the not-for-profit agencies, and yes, you're right. They're also getting a contribution back from the creditors.
Potentially, yeah.
Potentially, not all of them.
Not all
Some of them say no, forget it. I'm not paying anything. But now, in some cases, if it's you got 2 hydro bills and they're going to help you work it out, they may say, fine, we'll do it for nothing. We're not going to charge you anything. But if it's their standard contract says you're paying a 10% fee over and above what the debts are.
Right.
Don't keep a promise you can't keep.
Yeah, don't make stuff up. If you're going to answer the phone, have a plan and make sure you know your numbers so that you can actually agree to something.
Okay, things not to say would be, yes, I absolutely affirm that I owe this debt. I absolutely now I don't know if that's legally binding or not, but
I wouldn't tell them you have a TFSA with 15,000 in it.
Yeah, don't mention your assets.
Don't disclose assets.
Yeah.
Right, ever, because they're going to say, well, liquidate it. And
Yeah.
and again, they don't care. So if you think it's unrealistic for them to ask you to do that, they will.
Yep.
Right. And so, and we see that, and we even see that sometimes with proposals where,
Sure.
a creditor voting on a proposal will say, well, what about this asset? But we disclose the asset.
Yeah,
And so
we
it's different.
disclose everything. And if you have a loan at Bank ABC and you have a TFSA at Bank ABC, they already know about it.
No.
So it doesn't matter if you disclose it or not. It's already there.
Yeah, you have to remember who you're dealing with here. They're going to look you up, and anything that's internal or in-house, they're going to see, right?
Yeah.
So you have to know that.
Yeah, so I think when you get the call from the collector, you should anticipate this, and that's really why we're doing this podcast today. If you have debt and you're behind, what will you say when they call? And answer number one, well, telling the truth is the kind of the basic. I would do that.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to keep your story straight if you just tell the truth.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you have to tell your entire family story.
Right.
It just means what you tell them is the truth.
Just tell them the pertinent things.
The pertinent things. So, thanks for calling. I don't have the income to pay this debt.
Yeah.
Which is probably the truth, or else you would have paid it.
Yeah.
I'm bringing in a couple of grand and my expenses are a couple of grand.
Yeah. But here's what I do have.
Yeah. But what I can do is I could give you $50 every 2 weeks when I get paid.
Propose a plan.
Make
right?
a plan.
So in other words, make up your own proposal. In other words, right? Say, okay, for the next 6 months, I can give you X dollars per month, and then stop talking and see what they say.
Keeping your mouth shut is always good.
Yeah.
So if I owe $10,000 to this lender and I propose $50 every 2 weeks, what are they going to say?
Maybe no.
Yeah, maybe no.
They're gonna try and get more out of you. So start low. If you can handle 200, offer them 100, and then make it look like you're, okay, I can give you some more. But the other thing to consider here is that some collectors have bought the debt from the original creditor, right? So if it's an outside firm, sometimes they buy the debt. So they're seeking to make money off this. So if they paid 10 cents, they want 20 cents. Well, maybe 20 cents will do it.
Yeah.
But I had this line of credit at the bank and a bunch of stuff happened. I lost my job. I wasn't able to pay. Now it's on your desk.
Right.
So what is the best approach that I should take as the person owing the money when I'm talking to a collection agency? How should I negotiate with you?
Okay. Well, first of all, call us back. Obviously, if a collection agency calls and leaves an answering machine message, it's scary. But the collection agency, the consequences aren't going to go away if you don't return your call. If you play ostrich and stick your head in the sand, it's still going to hit your bureau. It's still going to accumulate interest. If the balance warrants it and the debt's under 2 years, legal action could start. So the best and first thing somebody can do is call back.
Okay, now you made 2 points there.
Sure.
So first of all, you said hit your bureau. What are we talking about there?
Okay, so we get an account. And we're not a typical agency. So understand that other agencies will do things in a more simplistic manner. We get 10,000 files. We don't want to affect those people's credit rating. We want to work with them because ultimately if they pay the account, we get our fee.
Everybody's happy.
Everybody wins. So what we typically will do is we'll list them on the bureau 60 days after we get them. So that gives us lots of time to reach out to the person. Now that being said, we call Bob Smith and Bob about this $100 account. And he says, burn in, heck you rat bastard. Okay, it's going to the bureau today. Clearly you don't want to take care of it. That being said, somebody says, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Can I, I've lost my job. Can I pay $100 a month? Of course you can. And as long as they keep their arrangements, we'll withhold it from the bureau. Now, when we report to the bureau, we go in the registered items section.
The bottom section of the credit
Right, where you show up with your bankruptcies, I show up with collections, and legal accounts show up with judgments. So it's bad. And once it's on there, the bureau doesn't want us taking it off. And it's there for 6 years from the date of delinquency, 7 if it's judgment. So we don't want to do that if we don't have to. That's ultimately our leverage in 99% of the accounts we get. We're not going to sue someone over $50. The credit bureau is our leverage, and we report to TransUnion and Equifax in Canada.